The first time she spoke to me, it wasn't much, just a knock, 3 quick taps on my door. I was sitting on the floor, laptop open, half watching a movie I didn't care about when I opened it. She stood there with a brown cardboard box in her hands. My name was scrawled across the label, but the box had been left outside her door instead of mine. "Think this belongs to you," she said. Her voice was low, even, the kind of voice that didn't need to try. She didn't smile, not really, but the corners of her mouth lifted just enough to soften her face. I noticed her hair first, pulled back, but a strand had slipped loose near her cheek. "Thanks," I said, too quickly. My hand brushed hers when I took the box. Neither of us mentioned it. She lingered a second longer than needed, then added, "You're new here." It wasn't a question. "Couple of weeks," I said. Still figuring out the laundry situation. I meant it as a joke, but it came out flat. Something passed through her eyes, amusement, maybe, before she nodded and stepped back. "The machines eat quarters. Don't trust them." Then she turned, bare feet padding against the hallway carpet, and shut her door behind her. That should have been it. But after that, I kept noticing her. At the laundromat in the basement, where she folded her clothes slowly, pressing every edge flat like it mattered. At the mailbox, where she squinted at the tiny keys before choosing the right one. Once, outside the building, she held a thermos against her chest and tilted her head toward the sky, as if waiting for rain that never came. I told myself I wasn't watching her. That I was just around. But the truth was quieter than that. I was lonely, and she was the only person who had said more than 3 words to me in days. One night, I almost texted an old friend, just typed out, "You up," but deleted it before hitting send. The screen glowed back at me, empty. I shut it off and sat in the dark, listening to the faint hum of the building. Through the wall, I thought I heard her moving, the muffled scrape of a chair. The second time she spoke to me, it was in the laundry room. "You always come down this late?" she asked, setting her basket on the counter. I shrugged. "Less chance someone takes my dryer." She laughed lightly, not at the words, but at the way I said them. Then, like she couldn't help it, she added, "I'm Claire." "Daniel," I replied. My voice caught, and I coughed to cover it. We didn't talk much after that. Just small things, her asking if I'd tried the cafe on the corner, me telling her the best time to get a machine without waiting. But I started to expect her. To listen for her steps in the hallway, to glance at her door when I came home. One night, I saw her standing outside my apartment. She had her keys in hand, like she'd just returned. For a second, I thought she was going to leave again. But then she turned, met my eyes, and instead of walking away, she closed her own door. Slowly, carefully. The next time we spoke, it wasn't planned. I was fumbling with the mailroom lock, trying to get the key to turn, when she appeared behind me. "You have to pull it toward you first," she said, brushing past gently. Her fingers closed over the tiny brass handle, turning the lock in one smooth motion. The door swung open. "Guess that explains the pile-up," I muttered, pulling out a fistful of envelopes. She glanced at them, then at me. "Bills? Or the fun kind of mail?" "Mostly reminders that I owe money." That earned me the smallest smile, a quick flicker before she tucked her hair behind her ear. For some reason, I wanted to keep her there, keep her talking. "Do you want to come in for tea?" The words slipped out faster than I could judge them. She hesitated, just long enough for me to wish I hadn't said anything. But then she nodded once. "Tea sounds nice." Her apartment was similar to mine, but warmer somehow. Stacks of books on the side table, a soft lamp casting gold light across the living room. The smell of something faint, lavender, maybe. She filled the kettle and leaned against the counter while it boiled. I noticed her bare feet again. She must have slipped her shoes off the moment she walked in. "How long have you been here?" I asked. 7 years, she said. Moved after the divorce. It was supposed to be temporary. I nodded, though the word divorce stuck. She said it simply, without bitterness, but it made the space between us feel sharper. She handed me a mug, steam curling up. And you? What brings you to this lovely palace of buzzing pipes and broken dryers? Honestly? I said. I was tired of moving back in with my parents every summer. Thought I'd try being, on my own. She tilted her head. You're young for that kind of tired. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that 24 can feel heavier than it looks. But instead, I took a sip of tea. Too hot. I winced. She noticed, of course, but didn't say anything. We sat on the couch, a cautious gap between us. The TV was off, the clock on the wall ticking louder than necessary. I set my mug down, trying not to stare at her hands. Long fingers wrapped neatly around the ceramic, nails bare. You ever get used to the quiet here? I asked. Her gaze lingered on me, unreadable. Some nights, she said softly. Other nights, not at all. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, like something was trying to form inside it. I thought about the way she'd closed her door that night, how deliberate it had felt. I wondered if she thought about it too. When she finally stood to see me out, she reached for my mug, her hand brushing mine in the exchange. It was nothing, just a practical gesture. But my chest tightened all the same. Good night, Daniel, she said. Her tone was steady, but her eyes lingered half a second longer than they should have. For a while, it became routine. I'd hear the faint clink of her teacups in the evening, or the hum of her kettle, and somehow that would turn into me knocking lightly on her door. She never seemed surprised when I showed up. But one night, she hesitated before letting me in. Busy? I asked, shifting on my feet. No, she said quickly, then added, just tired. Still, she stepped back, leaving the door wide enough for me to enter. Inside, the lamp was dimmer than usual. She sat on the couch with her legs tucked beneath her, a sweater draped around her shoulders. I tried to keep the air casual, but something about her stillness unnerved me. You okay? I'm fine. The pause that followed was too long. You don't have to check in, you know. I blinked. I wasn't, I just thought. Her eyes softened as if she regretted saying it. She reached for her tea, then set it down without drinking. Never mind. We sat there, silent, stretching. I tried not to fidget, but my knee bounced anyway. I caught her watching it. She smiled faintly, almost apologetic. You remind me of someone, she said. Who? My son's friend. Back when they were teenagers. Always restless, always waiting for something. That landed heavier than I expected. A reminder of the years between us. The invisible line. Before I could think of a response, a sharp knock rattled the door. She tensed, almost flinched. Then she stood quickly, smoothing her sweater. It was her neighbor from 2 floors down, asking about a parking spot. She spoke to him politely, but with a clipped tone that wasn't meant for me. When the door finally closed again, she leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Sorry, she said. I shook my head. Didn't know you were popular. That earned me a small laugh. The tension broke, but only slightly. We ended up side by side on the couch again, the clock ticking too loud in the corner. My shoulder brushed hers when I shifted. She didn't move away. Daniel, she began, then stopped. She folded her hands in her lap, fingers tightening. What? I asked. Her eyes met mine, steady, searching. Nothing. She looked down again. The air felt charged, like the space between us was pulling tighter. My throat went dry. I thought about leaning in, about closing that impossible distance. I thought about how her breath caught just slightly, like she was waiting for me to decide. But then she turned, just barely, breaking the moment. Her hair fell forward, shielding part of her face. We didn't move closer. Not yet. Still, when I left that night, the echo of what almost happened followed me down the hallway, louder than anything either of us had said. It was late afternoon when I saw her outside. She was sitting on the bench near the corner store, thermos in her hands, coat pulled tighter against the wind. I almost walked past, pretended not to notice, but she looked up right then, caught me mid-step. "Hey," she said. So I sat down beside her. The bench creaked under the shift of weight. For a while we just watched the street. Cars rolling by, a kid kicking a ball against the curb. Ordinary things, except the air between us wasn't ordinary at all. "You always carry that thing?" I asked, nodding to the thermos. Her mouth tilted. "Keeps me from fidgeting." I wanted to say I've noticed you fidget anyway but bit it back. Instead, I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. My hands wouldn't stay still. "You've been quiet," I said finally. She didn't answer right away. She turned the thermos slowly, metal catching the light. "Maybe I shouldn't be having tea with you all the time." The words dropped heavy. I turned to her. "Why not?" She sighed, like she'd been holding that thought too long. "Because I don't know what this is." A pause. "And I'm not sure I want to know." Her eyes flicked toward me, quick, almost guilty, before settling on the street again. I swallowed hard, heat crawling up my neck. "You think I know?" "You don't make this easy," she whispered. The honesty in it caught me off guard. My pulse hammered in my ears. I thought about saying something reckless, about closing the gap right there on the bench. But the moment held, trembling, without breaking. A breeze swept down the street, scattering leaves around our feet. She drew her sweater tighter, but her eyes stayed on me. I opened my mouth, ready to confess, something, anything. But she pressed her hand lightly to mine, stopping me. The touch was brief, but it burned. "Not here," she said softly. And just like that, the wall went back up. But the crack she'd left in it was enough. For 3 days, I didn't see her. Not in the hallway, not in the laundry room, not on the bench outside with her thermos. Her door stayed closed, light spilling faintly under it at night, but no sound, no kettle whistling. I told myself it didn't matter. People get busy. People need space. But I kept catching myself slowing down by her door, listening for something that wasn't there. On the 4th night, I finally heard movement. A low thump, then silence. I almost knocked, hand half raised. But then her door opened, and a man stepped out. Older, with a coat slung over his arm. He gave me a polite nod as he passed, like I was no one. She appeared behind him, hair tied back hastily, sweater sleeves pushed up. Her eyes flicked to me and froze. "Daniel," she said, her voice too calm. "Hey." My throat was dry. I gestured vaguely toward my apartment. "Just, heading in." She nodded, holding the door frame. For a second, it looked like she might say something. Instead, she pulled her sweater tighter and went back inside, shutting the door gently but firmly. I didn't knock. The next day, I found her in the mailroom. She was sorting letters quickly, like the act itself might distract her. "You've been busy," I said, more accusation than I intended. Her eyes flicked up. Something weary sat there. "My son's in town," she said. "Just for a week." That explained the man. It didn't explain the way my chest felt hollow. "Right," I muttered. "Of course." She hesitated, like she wanted to add something, but then only said, "I should go." And she left, leaving a faint trace of lavender in the air. The days that followed blurred. I stopped knocking. She stopped leaving her door cracked, stopped lingering at the bench. Every time I thought about going to her, I pictured that man leaving her apartment, or her voice saying my son's in town with a tone I couldn't quite read. I almost texted her, typed out, "Do you want to talk?" But I deleted it before hitting send. The blank screen glared back at me, heavy with everything I couldn't say. One night, I sat on the bench alone. The street was quiet, wind brushing leaves across the sidewalk. I half expected her to show up, thermos in hand, sitting just close enough for our shoulders to brush. But the space beside me stayed empty. The seat felt colder for it. It was late when I heard the knock. Soft, hesitant, so much so that I thought I imagined it at first. But when I opened the door, she was there. Sweater sleeves pushed up, hair loose around her shoulders. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She walked past me, not waiting for an answer, and stood in the center of the room like she wasn't sure what to do with her hands. "You've been distant," I said finally. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. "I thought it was better that way." "Better for who?" The words came sharper than I meant. She flinched, but then her shoulders dropped. "For you." "For me." "I don't know." She turned, pressing her palm against the back of the couch, fingers splayed. "Daniel, you don't understand what it means, having you here. You make me," she cut herself off, shaking her head. "Make you what?" I asked, softer this time. Her lips parted, then closed again. She sat down, finally, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I've spent years keeping things simple. Work. Groceries. Laundry. That's it. I know what it looks like to need someone, and I promised myself I wouldn't go back there." The silence pressed in around us. I sat across from her, leaning forward. "You think that's what this is? Need?" She looked up sharply, as if I'd hit too close. I swallowed, my throat dry. "I don't knock on your door because I need anything. I do it because I want to." Her expression shifted, something flickering through, fear, hope, both. "And if I can't give you what you want? Then I'll still want to sit with you. Drink bad tea. Talk about broken dryers." I almost laughed, but it caught in my chest. "That's enough." She closed her eyes for a moment, like the words hurt. When she opened them, they were brighter. Wet at the edges. "You make it sound so easy," she whispered. "It isn't," I said. "But that doesn't make it wrong." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then she reached across the space between us, her hand trembling slightly as it landed over mine. Warm. Real. I didn't speak. Neither did she. Her thumb brushed once against my skin, small, almost accidental. Then she exhaled, shoulders easing, and gave the faintest smile. "Okay," she said. Just that. It was enough. The days didn't change all at once. They never do. At first, it was the same small patterns, passing in the hallway, a nod at the mailboxes. Only now, when her door closed at night, I knew it wasn't shutting me out. It was just shutting the world out. Sometimes I still caught myself hesitating before knocking. But then, without fail, her door would open before I touched it, like she'd been listening too. We didn't talk about what we were, not directly. Instead, we built it in pieces. A thermos of tea left on my counter. My jacket hanging on her chair. An inside joke about the dryer stealing socks. None of it big, none of it loud, but steady. One Saturday morning, we sat on the bench near the corner store, steam rising from her thermos. She poured half into the lid and slid it over without a word. I held it, fingers brushing hers for a second too long, and realized I wasn't restless anymore. The silence between us had shifted. Not heavy now. Just easy. 8:47, she murmured suddenly. I frowned. What? She nodded toward the crosswalk clock. That's the time I always see you walking back from the cafe. I laughed quietly. So you were watching me first. Her lips curved, the kind of smile she rarely showed. Maybe. The breeze carried the sound of traffic, kids shouting in the distance. Ordinary things. But her shoulder was against mine, and I felt it settle deeper than anything dramatic ever could. We still had the unspoken parts. The years between us. The history she carried, the uncertainty I hadn't outgrown. Sometimes guilt flickered in her eyes, sometimes doubt tightened my chest. But we learned to leave room for both. To sit with them instead of pretending they weren't there. One night, as we packed up mugs in her kitchen, I asked, "Do you ever regret it? Letting me in?" She dried a cup with the hem of her sweater, thoughtful. "No," she said softly. Then, after a pause, "I regret waiting so long." That stayed with me. The way she said it, not as confession, but as truth finally allowed. And maybe that's what this was, not perfect, not easy, but true. Weeks passed, routines overlapping until they felt shared. I still sent unsent texts sometimes, words that didn't make it past the screen. But then her knock would come, 3 soft taps, and the words wouldn't be needed. On the bench one evening, she leaned against me, thermos warm between us, and whispered something I almost didn't catch. "This stayed," she said. Just that.